The sky over Earth had been calm for weeks. It was the middle of the summer season in most countries, and people were busy with their daily lives. Markets were full, children played in parks, and cities glowed at night. No one expected that in a single morning, everything would change. It started with a sudden shadow over the Pacific Ocean. Satellites picked it up first, a massive object moving silently through space. News channels broke their usual broadcasts to show the strange sight. At first, people thought it was an asteroid. Then the cameras zoomed in. The object was no rock. It was smooth, silver, and shaped like a long spear. Within hours, every government was on alert. Fighter jets flew over coasts, and warships moved into position. Scientists were called to analyze the object's movement. But the strange thing was, it did not fall toward Earth. It slowed down, then stopped in orbit. The object was a ship, and it was bigger than anything humanity had ever built. From the International Space Station, astronauts watched as sections of the ship unfolded, like petals of a giant metal flower. Lights ran along its edges, glowing blue. Then, from the very center, a smaller craft emerged. It headed straight for Earth. In the capital city of the United Nations, leaders gathered in the main chamber. The room buzzed with nervous whispers. Mara, a young communications officer, sat at her desk near the back, listening to the chatter in her headset. She had trained for years to work here, but she had never imagined her first real mission would involve visitors from another world. A voice crackled in her ear. The craft has entered Earth's atmosphere. No sign of weapons. It is heading toward Geneva. Geneva, Switzerland, where the United Nations building stood. Minutes later, a low hum filled the air over the city. People ran outside, pointing to the sky. The alien craft was smooth and white. Shaped like a tier of glass, it moved slowly, almost gracefully, and stopped above the plaza in front of the UN headquarters. The bottom of the ship opened, and a ramp extended to the ground. From the opening, 3 figures stepped out. They were tall, at least 8 feet, with long arms and narrow faces. Their skin shimmered like polished stone, shifting between silver and pale blue as they moved. Their eyes were large, with black pupils that seemed to take in everything at once. They wore long robes covered in glowing patterns. The crowd fell. Silent, even the wind seemed to pause. The tallest of the 3 stepped forward and spoke. The words were strange, deep, and musical, yet somehow they echoed inside everyone's mind in perfect translation. We are the Zorth. We come in peace. We bring a gift to guide you to the stars. Gasps spread through the crowd. Cameras flashed, and reporters pushed forward to capture every detail. Security forces kept their hands on their weapons but did not fire. Behind them, Zorth, another ramp extended. This time, a floating platform emerged, carrying an object unlike anything humans had seen before. It was a crystal, as tall as a person, glowing faintly with soft blue light. Inside the crystal, tiny threads of silver shifted and twisted like living things. The Zorth leader placed one long hand on the crystal. This, the voice in everyone's mind said, is the Minlight. It will open the door to knowledge beyond your own. It will lift you to a higher path. The crystal was set gently on the ground. The Zorth stepped back, as if expecting applause. Inside the UN chamber, Mara watched the live feed on the big screens. Her fingers tapped nervously on the table. Something about the way the Zorth stood, so calm and confident, made her uneasy. The Secretary General of the UN stepped forward, his voice shaking slightly as he spoke into a microphone. We welcome you to Earth. We thank you for this gift. The Zorth leader bowed slightly. We are pleased you accept. Soon, you will see the truth of our gift. Use it well. And just like that, the aliens turned and walked back into their craft. The ramps closed, and the ship rose into the air. Without another sound, it returned to orbit, docking once more with the massive vessel above. For the rest of the day, the crystal sat in the plaza, guarded by soldiers and studied by scientists. Dr. Lang, a physicist from Germany, ran his hands over its smooth surface. No seams, no openings, he muttered to his team. The energy inside is like nothing I've ever seen. Technicians set up scanners and cameras, recording every detail. The crystal's glow seemed to pulse, almost like a heartbeat. By evening, the crystal was moved to a secure research facility under the Alps. There, teams from around the world would examine it. Mara stayed late at her post, monitoring communications between the scientists and world leaders. At first, the reports were full of excitement. The crystal contained vast amounts of data blueprints, star maps, and what appeared to be alien language files. Many celebrated this as the greatest discovery in human history. But as the night wore on, the excitement began to shift into quiet unease. One scientist's voice came over the channel. Low and tense, we found a secondary signal inside the crystal. It's not part of the data. It's transmitting something. Mara leaned closer to her headset. Transmitting to where? A long pause. Back to the alien ship. Her stomach tightened. She looked up at the big screen, where the massive vessel still floated above Earth like a silent moon. The scientist continued. We don't know what kind of signal it is yet, but it's reading brainwaves. Brainwaves, Mara repeated. Yes, every person who comes near the crystal, it records and sends their brain patterns, their thoughts. Maybe. Mara's pulse quickened. She knew what that meant. This was not just a gift. It was a way for the Zorth to see inside human minds. She glanced again at the silent, silver giant in orbit, somewhere in her chest. The first spark of defiance began to burn. The day after the Zorth left the crystal, the world was still caught between wonder and uncertainty. News channels replayed the landing over and over. Commentators called it a new age for humanity. Some people believed the crystal was a symbol of friendship. Others felt a quiet unease but could not explain why. In the underground research facility beneath the Alps, the crystal sat in a wide, white room. The air was cold and still, humming faintly from hidden machines. Armed guards stood at every entrance. Scientists moved around the glowing object like cautious explorers approaching a wild animal. Mara had been allowed into the observation room that overlooked the lab. She was not a scientist, but her position in the United Nations Communication Network gave her access to secure transmissions. Her job was to listen, to watch, and to report. Dr. Lang stood close to the crystal, speaking into a recorder. Surface remains unchanged, energy signature constant. Attempting deep scan now. A low vibration filled the lab as a scanning device passed a beam of light through the crystal. Lines of alien code appeared on the monitors. The code pulsed and shifted, almost like it was alive. One of the younger researchers, Aiden, frowned at the screen. That's strange. The pattern isn't just reacting to the scan, it's adjusting to our presence. Dr. Lang turned toward him. Adjusting how? Look here, Aiden said, pointing at a section of code. When you stepped closer, these lines changed. It's as if the crystal noticed you. Mara leaned forward, her fingers tightening around her notepad. Hours passed. The team worked in shifts, taking turns examining the data. It was past midnight when something unusual happened. Aiden, who had been running the data through a translation program, froze in his seat. Mara, he called through the intercom. You should hear this. She walked down to the lab, passing through 2 layers of security doors. Aiden showed her the translation on his screen. The alien code contained more than maps and blueprints. Hidden deep inside were records, lists of neural patterns and emotional responses, all tagged with time and date stamps. Mara's voice was quiet. These are human brain scans. Aiden nodded slowly. Everyone who's been near the crystal. It's reading their brain activity and sending it somewhere. Dr. Lang joined them, his face pale. We traced the outgoing signal. It's going directly to the Zorth ship in orbit. The air in the room seemed heavier. Mara thought of the Zorth leader's calm voice, the way he had spoken of guidance and higher paths. Now she understood. The crystal was not just a gift, it was a tool to see inside humanity's thoughts. Aiden broke them. Silence. If they can read our minds, they can predict what we'll do before we do it. Mara felt her chest tighten. She had seen enough in her career to know what that meant. Negotiations, diplomacy, even war, all of it would be useless if the other side already knew your moves. Later that morning, she was called into a secure briefing with General Ross. one of the few military leaders allowed direct oversight of the alien contact situation. He was a tall, broad man with sharp eyes and a voice that carried authority even when he spoke softly. Morrow laid the data on the table. Sir, the crystal is not just a data library. It's a surveillance device. It's mapping the minds of everyone who comes near it and sending the information to the Zorth. Ross studied the papers, his jaw tightening. Do we know why? No, Mara said, but I think it's to control us. If they understand how we think, they can influence us. The speeches, the offers of guidance, they're setting us up to be managed. Ross leaned back in his chair. That's not a gift. That's an insult. They think we're children. Her voice was steady, but her hands were tense. Yes, sir, and if we let them, they'll treat us like children forever. By afternoon, the mood in the UN chamber had shifted. Publicly, the leaders still spoke of peace and cooperation. Privately, the whispers were growing sharper. Some argued for returning the crystal immediately. Others wanted to keep studying it, hoping to find a weakness. A few like Ross were already thinking of ways to fight back. Mara returned to her desk and began scanning through intercepted alien transmissions. Most were encrypted beyond her skill, but one fragment caught her attention. It was in the Zorth's deep, musical language, but the translation program managed to catch certain words. The message read, "The young ones are simple. They will welcome the guiding hand. Within a cycle, they will follow without question." Mara's heart pounded. She replayed the words over and over. There was no doubt the Zorth saw humanity not as equals, but as a species to be tamed. She forwarded the message to Ross with a short note. They are not our friends. That night, while the world slept, a small group gathered in a secure conference room far beneath the UN building. The air smelled faintly of metal and coffee. Maps of Earth's orbit and the solar system glowed on the wall screens. Ross stood at the head of the table. We have two options, he said. We accept their control and hope they mean well, or we prepare to show them that humanity will not be handled like livestock. No one spoke at first. Then an older engineer named Silva cleared his throat. Sir, their ships are far ahead of ours. We can't win in a straight fight. Ross's eyes were cold but determined. Then we don't fight straight. We use what they can't predict: our creativity, our unpredictability. Every species they've met before probably tried to match their strength. We won't. Mara listened carefully, her mind already racing with ideas. If they could track the Zorth's supply routes, if they could learn the limits of their technology, maybe there was a chance. Silva spoke again. We'll need ships, weapons, people who can think fast and move unseen. Ross nodded. We'll call it Operation Ember. It starts now. The room fell silent as everyone understood the weight of the moment. Humanity had been given a gift, but it was not a blessing. It was a chain, meant to wrap around their minds. And now, the chain would be broken. When Mara left the building hours later, the streets of Geneva were quiet. Above, the alien ship still floated in orbit, a silver spear in the night sky. She stared up at it for a long moment. They think they understand us, she whispered to herself. They don't. Somewhere deep inside her, that first spark of defiance grew brighter. For the next several days, the official speeches from the United Nations remained polite and hopeful. On television, world leaders still smiled when speaking. Of the Zorth, the public was told the crystal was a gift of knowledge, a bridge to the stars. But beneath those bright words, in locked rooms and hidden bases, a different conversation was taking place. General Ross worked from a secure military command center deep beneath the mountains. The air inside smelled faintly of oil and metal. Long rows of screens glowed with maps of the solar system, supply charts, and intercepted transmissions. A dozen officers and engineers moved quietly between stations. Mara stood beside him, holding a tablet loaded with the latest decoded messages. From the Zorth, each one was worse than the last. The aliens spoke of timelines, control measures, and mental alignment. There was no doubt now they had plans to guide humanity's future without permission. Ross pointed at the image of the massive alien vessel above Earth. They've been here less than a month, and they've already mapped our minds. If we Wait, they'll start shaping our decisions before we even know it's happening, Mara asked. Do we have any allies in this, or are we alone? Ross gave a grim smile. Alone for now. But that can change. He tapped the table, and a 3D map appeared. It showed Earth's orbit, the moon, the asteroid belt, and several known Zorth patrol routes. This is where Operation Ember begins, Ross said. We hit them where they're not looking. We make it costly for them to stay. The plan sounded impossible. Humanity had no ships that could match Zorth's speed or weapons that could pierce their strongest armor. But Ross believed in something: the aliens might not understand adaptability. Instead of building new warships from scratch, they would use what they already had. Mining vessels in the asteroid belt, cargo haulers between Earth and Mars, and old orbital stations would be refitted for combat. They would be armed with railguns, explosive charges, and whatever alien technology could be copied from the crystal's data. The first step was secrecy. No official announcement could be made. While the world's media reported on friendly exchanges with the Zorth, small teams of engineers, pilots, and soldiers quietly disappeared from their normal duties and were reassigned to hidden hangars. Mara's role was different. She would intercept and decode as many alien communications as possible, searching for clues about their supply routes and weaknesses. One night, she sat in a dimly lit room filled with the hum of computers, her eyes fixed on a scrolling line of alien code. She had been at it for hours when a pattern emerged: regular shipments from a Zorth base near Jupiter's orbit to the ship above Earth. The cargo was always labeled as stabilization materials, but there was no clear explanation. She forwarded the details to Ross. The next morning, Ross gathered a small group in the briefing room. The walls were lined with star charts and tactical diagrams. Our first strike will be here, he said, pointing to the Jupiter supply route. They don't expect us to have ships this far out. We'll use modified mining craft, fast, low profile, and armed with railguns. The goal isn't to destroy everything. It's to show them that we can reach them anywhere. Silva, the older engineer, rubbed his chin. If we pull this off, they'll know we're not an easy target. But they'll hit back. Ross's voice was calm. Yes, and when they do, they'll find we're ready. The preparations began immediately. On Mars, mining crews worked through the night, welding armor plating onto their ships. In the asteroid belt, hidden workshops built weapons from salvage parts and experimental designs. Every tool, every bolt, every engine upgrade had to be hidden from Zorth scanners. In the meantime, Mara continued her work, and what she found deepened her resolve. The Zorth were not only sending the brainwave data back to their ship, they were sharing it with other fleets across the galaxy. Humanity was being studied like a puzzle to be solved. She met Ross in the command center late one evening to show him the evidence. They're preparing for more than just us, she said. They've done this before, to others. Whole civilizations have been brought under their control. Ross studied the files silently. Then he looked at her with steady eyes. Then we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every world they've silenced. 3 weeks later, the first Ember Strike team was ready. They called themselves the Ashwing, a name chosen to remind them that from ashes, new fire could rise. Their ships were small and rough-looking compared to the sleek Zorth vessels. But inside, they carried railguns with enough power to tear through unshielded cargo pods, and stealth systems designed to make them nearly invisible to long-range scans. Before departure, Ross addressed the crew through the comms. The Zorth think they understand us. They think a gift can buy our loyalty. Show them they are wrong. Show them that humans do not bow. Mara stood in the control room, watching the ships lift off from a hidden launch site on the dark side of the moon. Their engines flared briefly before fading into the blackness of space. The journey to the Jupiter route took days. The Ashwing ships traveled silently, avoiding any major shipping lanes. Inside the cramped cabins, the crews spoke little. They all knew this was more than a mission. It was the first act of defiance in what could become a long war. Finally, the convoy appeared on their sensors. 3 Zorth cargo vessels, escorted by 2 patrol craft, moved steadily along the route. Their hulls gleamed under distant sunlight. each one marked with the same glowing patterns seen on the leader's robes. The Ashwing attack began with a silent approach, their ships drifting in the shadow of a large asteroid. When the Zorth convoy passed within range, the railguns fired in rapid succession. Metal slugs, moving faster than sound, tore into the side of the first cargo ship. Explosions rippled across its hull, and the vessel broke apart in a spray of glowing fragments. The Zorth patrol craft scrambled to respond, but the Ashwing ships had already moved, using the asteroid's gravity to slingshot away. The second volley hit another cargo vessel, disabling its engines. Fires burned along its side, sending trails of debris into space. By the time the Zorth patrols locked onto the attackers, the Ashwing had vanished into the black. When the news reached Earth, it spread through secret channels among the Ember network. The first strike had been a success. Humanity had drawn blood. In the command center, Ross allowed himself the smallest of smiles. "They'll come for us now," he said quietly, "and we'll be ready." Mara stood beside him, her eyes on the glowing map of the solar system. The Zorth had given them a gift, thinking it would tame humanity. Instead, it had lit a fire, one that would now spread across the stars. The success of the Ashwing raid had sent ripples through the secret Ember network. For the first time, humans had struck at the Zorth and come back alive. The victory was small compared to the size of the enemy, but it proved something important. They could be hurt. General Ross stood in the command center, looking at a rotating 3D image of the solar system. Red lines marked Zorth patrols, supply routes, and orbital stations. The alien flagship above Earth remained a constant presence, its silver hull shining like a knife against the darkness. "They will tighten their patrols after this," Ross said to the gathered officers, "which means the next strike will be harder. But harder is what we were made for." This time, the mission would take them to the asteroid belt. The target was a Zorth refueling outpost hidden among the rocks. From there, the aliens sent smaller patrols to keep watch over mining operations. If the outpost was destroyed, the Zorth would have to stretch their patrol lines thinner, giving humanity more room to move. Mara sat at her station, scanning intercepted Zorth messages. She caught fragments of alien speech and strange code, each line slowly revealing more about their operations. At last, she found the key detail: the refueling station's defense system relied on an automated drone network, but the drones were slow to react to attacks from multiple angles. She passed the information to Ross. He smiled faintly. "Good. Then we hit them from every direction at once." The Ember engineers worked quickly. Cargo ships and mining craft were stripped down to reduce weight. Hidden compartments were filled with explosive charges and makeshift torpedoes. Railguns were mounted on reinforced frames, and improvised armor covered the hulls. 3 days later, a small human fleet slipped out from a hidden base near Mars. The lead ship, the Iron Dawn, carried Captain Hale and a crew of 30. The other, 4 vessels, smaller and faster, were nicknamed Ghosts because their heat signatures were masked to blend with the cold rocks of space. Mara watched them depart from the command center. She had wanted to be out there, but Ross needed her on the ground to monitor enemy responses. Still, as the ships vanished into the black, she felt the same knot of worry tighten in her chest. The journey to the asteroid belt was tense, but uneventful. The Iron Dawn crew kept chatter to a minimum, focusing on their approach. Beyond the windows, the asteroids drifted in slow silence, massive shapes turning lazily against a background of stars. At last, the target appeared on sensors, a cluster of dark rocks anchored together by alien metal structures. The refueling outpost was built into the largest asteroid, its docking bays glowing faintly. Zorth supply ships were tethered to its side, refueling before continuing their routes. Captain Hale gave the order: "Ghosts, split and circle. Hit the drones first. Make them look everywhere at once." The ghost ships peeled away, vanishing into the shadows between rocks. The Iron Dawn stayed on its course, heading directly toward the station. Moments later, the first shot rang out. A railgun slug slammed into a drone dock near the station's outer ring, tearing it apart in a burst of white light. Another ghost ship struck from the opposite side, drawing the rest of the drones away from the station. The Zorth responded quickly, launching more drones from hidden bays. The small machines swarmed like insects, firing bright streams of energy. But the ghost ships kept moving, weaving through the asteroids and firing in short bursts before disappearing again. Hale's voice was steady. Iron Dawn, full burn. Bring us in close. The ship's engines roared as they accelerated. From the bow, the railgun fired 3 shots in rapid succession. The first tore through a fuel tank, sending liquid fire spinning into the void. The second smashed into a docking arm, breaking it apart and sending a Zorth ship drifting. The third hit the station's power relay, causing half the lights to go dark. In the command center back on Earth, Mara's screens lit up with alien distress calls. The Zorth were demanding reinforcements, but their nearest patrol was too far away to help in time. Keep pushing, she whispered under her breath, as if the crews could hear her across the vast distance. On the Iron Dawn, alarms blared as energy blasts struck the hull. The armor held, but only just. Hale ordered the release of the first set of explosives. The charges were magnetic, clinging to the station's outer walls before detonating in a ripple of flame. The ghost ships regrouped, swooping in to finish off the remaining drones. Without its automated defenses, the station was left vulnerable. Target the fuel lines, Hale commanded. A final railgun shot punched into the main pipeline. The explosion was blinding, a wave of fire and debris blasting out into the asteroid field. One of the smaller Zorth ships tried to escape, but a ghost vessel cut it off, firing until its engines went dark. From her desk on Earth, Mara saw the station's signal fade from the network. The icon on her map went from red to gray. It was gone. The human fleet pulled back quickly, engines burning hard to escape before reinforcements arrived. They didn't speak much over comms. Every pilot and crew member was focused on getting home alive. Hours later, when the Iron Dawn and the Ghost re-entered secure human space, the Ember network erupted with quiet celebration. No public news story would tell the truth, but among those who knew, the victory meant everything. Ross stood in the center of the command room, hands behind his back. You lit the first flame, he told the returning crews over the comms. The Zorth now know this is no easy occupation. Every day they stay here will cost them. Mara allowed herself a rare smile. That's the strikes, she said softly to Ross. How many before they understand we won't stop? Ross didn't answer right away. He looked at the map of the solar system, where the alien flagship still hovered over Earth. They'll understand, he said at last, but not before they make their move. And when they do, we'll be ready. In orbit, the Zorth flagship shifted position slightly, as if watching more closely now. It had been a silent shadow for weeks, but everyone in Ember could feel the change. The game had moved to a new stage. Humanity had drawn blood again, and the fire was only growing. The Unity fleet was now a sight feared across the alien sectors. The humans had moved from defense to offense. Where once they had been the ones preparing for an attack, now they were the storm arriving at someone else's doorstep. In the dark emptiness of space, their warships glided in formation, each one glowing with the cold light of purpose. Admiral Ross stood at the bridge of the flagship Valor's Edge, his hands behind his back as the starfield shifted in the main view. Every order he gave was calm, but the crew could feel the heavy weight in his voice. The last few campaigns had proven one thing: humanity would not let insults pass unanswered. The next target was not just another outpost or research hub. This time, they were going for Trine Prime, the central world of the Trine race, the very species that had brought the so-called gift to Earth. It was a world covered in crystal towers and blue oceans, known for its beauty. But Ross knew, beauty could not erase betrayal. Beside him, Commander Hale studied the incoming data. Admiral, long-range sensors confirm that Trine Prime's defenses are active. They have planetary shields, orbital cannons, and a defensive fleet of at least 30 ships. Ross gave a slow nod. They will hear the last warning before the fire. The communication link opened, and moments later, the face of Chancellor Varric of Trine appeared, a tall alien with thin silver skin and deep-set glowing eyes. His voice was smooth, but there was tension in it. Human fleet, Your approach is an act of war. State your intentions." Ross stepped forward so his voice carried across the link. "Your people called it a gift. We called it an insult. You sought to weaken us, to make Earth kneel under your control. This is your last chance to surrender your weapons, dismantle your war councils, and pay for the lives lost because of your deception." Varric's eyes narrowed. "We sought only to bring you into order. Humanity is dangerous. You cannot see the greater good." Ross's voice was firm. "The greater good is not decided by those who stand above others and call themselves wise. The greater good is earned through respect. You will answer for what you have done." The call ended abruptly. The alien fleet began to move. In the lower decks of the Valor's Edge, Marines prepared for combat drops. Armor was checked, weapons loaded, and final words spoken between friends. Sergeant Lewis moved through his squad, making sure each soldier was ready. His calm smile gave courage to the younger recruits, even though he knew the battle ahead could claim them. "Remember," he said to them, "this isn't just about revenge. It's about making sure no one else tries to do to us what they did. We're fighting so that our children grow up free." Private Morgan, the youngest in the squad, nodded firmly. "They'll know who we are when we're done." The human fleet broke formation and spread into attack positions. Destroyers moved to flank the enemy, while carriers stayed back, launching waves of strike craft. The blackness of space lit up with the first exchange of fire. Blue energy beams from the Trine fleet clashed with bright orange railgun slugs from the human warships. Missiles streaked between ships, leaving trails of light before exploding in sudden bursts. Ross gave his next order without hesitation. "Target their shield generators. Bring down the walls before the gates." On the surface of Trine Prime, people looked up to see the sky alive with streaks of light. The planetary shield shimmered as it absorbed the first impacts, but cracks began to show in its steady glow. In the command center of Trine Prime, Chancellor Varric stood surrounded by his advisors. Reports came in fast human precision strikes, overwhelming force, and no hesitation. One advisor whispered urgently, "Chancellor, they will breach the shield in hours." Varric hesitated. For the first time, he felt something he had not expected. The cold edge of fear. Back in space, Commander Hale's voice was steady. "Admiral, the shield's power is down to 30%. We can bring it down completely in the next wave." Ross glanced once more at the planet in the viewport. "Send the last message. If they choose to stand, they choose their end." The transmission went out clear, simple, final. "This is humanity's last warning. Surrender now, or the fire will come." But no surrender came. The next volley of human fire was heavier than the last. The shields of Trine Prime shattered like glass under the weight of railguns, plasma cannons, and missile strikes. The orbital cannons tried to fire back, but precision bombing runs from human strike craft silenced them one by one. The Trine defensive fleet, though skilled, began to fall apart under the relentless assault. Ships exploded in bright flashes, drifting wreckage turning into obstacles in the battlefield. Sergeant Lewis and his squad waited in their drop pods, feeling the rumble of the ship as weapons fired. Lewis looked at his team and said, "Once we're down there, we move fast, no hesitation." By the end of the first day, the skies above Trine Prime were under human control. The fleet remained in orbit, weapons locked on the planet. Ross stood silently on the bridge, looking at the blue and green world below. He had given them the last warning. Now, the choice was there's peace on humanity's terms, or fire that would burn across their homeworld. The battle for Trine Prime had entered a new phase after the devastating orbital strike. Human forces prepared to land on the planet's surface. The tension inside the human fleet was high, but so was the determination. They had come to show that humanity did not accept control or insult from any power. Captain Hale stood on the bridge of the Iron Dawn, the lead ship of the landing force. He looked at the glowing blue-green planet below them. The once beautiful world now showed scars from the bombardment. Thick clouds of smoke rose from shattered cities, and rivers of molten metal glowed where great factories had burned. "We go down with a clear goal," Hale said to his crew. "Take the main command center and secure the communication towers. If we cut their command, we cut their control. Below, the Trine defenders were preparing for what they hoped would be a strong resistance. Chancellor Varric watched the unfolding battle from the capital city. His eyes were tired, but his voice was steady when he spoke to his generals. We face an enemy unlike any before. Humans are unpredictable. We must hold the ground and protect our people. On the streets, the Trine citizens were frightened. Many had never seen war reach their homeworld. The bright towers and shimmering domes that had seemed eternal now showed cracks and fires. Families gathered in shelters, hoping for peace, but ready to defend their homes. The first human drop pods pierced the atmosphere with glowing trails. Inside, squads of Marines braced themselves, gripping their weapons tightly. Sergeant Lewis led his team, the same one that had fought in space. His voice was calm as he prepared them for landing. Remember why we fight. Not for anger, but for freedom, for every human in every world they want to control. The pods slammed onto the ground, sending clouds of dust and debris into the air. The doors opened and the soldiers rushed out, their boots crunching on broken glass and metal. Enemy fire greeted them instantly. Energy blasts flashed from hidden towers and mobile units. But the humans pressed forward, using cover and coordinated attacks to push through the defenders. Captain Hill communicated from the command ship, "Lewis, your team has the lead. Take the eastern communication tower. It is vital." Lewis nodded and signaled his squad. They moved with purpose, covering each other as they advanced. The city streets were a maze of rubble and smoke. Occasionally, they caught glimpses of Trine soldiers, tall, slender figures with shimmering skin and glowing eyes, fierce but disorganized. The defenders struggled to stop the human advance dot as they approached the tower. Lewis paused to check the plan. The tower was surrounded by a force field and guarded by energy turrets. "We'll need to disable the shields first," he said, using compact EMP grenades. The squad moved close and threw them near the shield generators. The field flickered and died. At that moment, a squad of Trine soldiers rushed forward. The battle was fierce and close. Lewis and his team fought with everything they had. Their training and courage pushed the defenders back, and soon the communication tower was under human control. Inside, engineers quickly began sending new signals. They replaced the Trine commands with human codes. The entire battlefield shifted as the Trine forces lost coordination. Meanwhile, on the ground, the civilians watched as the fight moved through their streets. Some hid in fear, others stepped out to help those injured. A young Trine woman named Sila worked as a medic, tending to wounded children caught in the chaos. She wondered how this conflict would end. She did not hate the humans, but she knew they fought with a fire she had never seen before. There was a strength in them that the Zorth had underestimated. Back in space, Admiral Ross monitored the battle's progress. He knew that the fall of Trine Prime's communication system would weaken the entire enemy defense. It was the turning point they needed. On board the Valor's Edge, Ross addressed his officers. "The enemy is losing its voice. Soon, their forces will fall into confusion. We must be ready to press the attack." The fighting continued for days. Each step forward was costly. But the humans did not stop. They pushed into the heart of the city, capturing key buildings and cutting off supplies. Chancellor Varric realized that the battle was slipping away. He ordered a retreat to a smaller stronghold deep beneath the planet's surface, a last attempt to regroup. But the humans were relentless. They sealed off escape routes and surrounded the underground fortress. The siege lasted through long hours, the silence broken only by distant explosions. Finally, with no choice left, Varric agreed to speak with General Ross in a secure communication channel. Varric's voice was quieter now. "You have shown strength I did not expect. We surrender under your terms." Ross's reply was firm but not cruel. "You brought this on yourselves. Now, you must learn to respect others. The galaxy is not yours to control." As the humans took control of Trine Prime, the message spread quickly. Other alien races, watching the battle, began to question the Zorth's dominance. The spark of rebellion was growing. Mara listened to the reports from the front lines. Her heart swelled with pride and sadness. Pride for the courage of her people, sadness for the cost of war. She knew this was only the beginning. The fight for freedom would continue, but humanity had shown it would never bow to insult or control. The turning point had come. The fire had begun to burn bright across the stars. The fall of Trine Prime sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity would not be controlled or silenced. The Zorth, once certain of their power, now faced a rising force fueled by determination and pride. General Ross stood on the bridge of the Valor's Edge, watching the endless stars. Reports streamed in from many fronts. More alien worlds, previously silent or fearful, began reaching out to the Ember Network. They longed for freedom. Mara, working tirelessly in the communications room, decoded intercepted messages from distant systems. Alien leaders whispered about the human fire, a fierce spirit no one had expected. Ross turned to his officers. We must be ready for what comes next. The Zorth will not give up easily. This war is only beginning. Far from Earth, in a hidden star system, the Zorth High Council met. Their leader, Supreme Elder Narek, addressed the room with cold authority. The humans have challenged us and burned our outposts. Their courage is strong, but their technology is still young. We must strike harder and show them that no one defies the Zorth. His voice was calm but full of warning. Prepare the fleets. We will crush this rebellion before it spreads. Back on Earth, the Ember Network expanded. Humanity's allies grew, including some alien species who had suffered under the Zorth. Together, they shared technology, knowledge, and courage. Captain Hale led new missions to liberate occupied worlds. Each victory inspired more to join the fight. His crews learned to move faster, strike harder, and adapt in ways the Zorth could not predict. One mission took them to Kara's Reach, a small mining colony under strict Zorth rule. Hale's team moved under the cover of darkness, disabling patrols and freeing the workers. The colony joined the Ember Alliance, adding resources and fighters. Despite setbacks, the Zorth struck back fiercely. Their fleets launched massive attacks on human outposts and supply lines. Battles lit the void with fire and destruction. During one fierce engagement near the Vela Nebula, the human fleet found itself surrounded. Outnumbered and outgunned, the crews fought with desperation. In the heat of battle, Captain Hale's voice rang out. Hold the line. Remember what we fight for. We do not give up. Against all odds, the humans held their ground. Through courage and quick thinking, they broke the enemy's formation and escaped to fight another day. Back on Earth, Mara watched the battle feeds. The cost was heavy. Many brave souls had fallen. Still, the hope in humanity's spirit shone brighter than ever. General Ross stood beside her. The fire spreads because we fight with heart. The Zorth can take our worlds, but they cannot take our will. Mara nodded. They thought the gift would bind us. Instead, it lit a flame no one can extinguish. The war stretched on for months. The stars became a battlefield where every victory and loss shaped the future. Then, a new hope arrived. Scientists working with Ember allies discovered a way to reverse some of the Zorth mind control. Technology found in the crystal. It was slow work, but the first successes came when freed worlds resisted the mental influence that had once controlled them. This breakthrough strengthened the resolve of the Ember Network. More races joined, and the Zorth's grip weakened. At the heart of the conflict, General Ross prepared for the decisive battle. The Zorth flagship still hovered over Earth, a symbol of their claim. Taking it down meant more than victory, it meant freedom. The human fleet gathered in formation, ships shining like stars themselves. Ross addressed the crews one last time. Today, we fight for every world under shadow. Today, we show that no chain can hold the human spirit. The battle was fierce and long. The Zorth flagship unleashed devastating weapons, but the humans fought with unity and courage. Strike teams breached the ship's defenses, fighting through corridors and chambers. Captain Hale led the boarding party, his squad moving with determination. They faced the Zorth guards in fierce combat, pushing forward room by room. At last, They reached the command bridge. Ross and Hale confronted the Zorth leader, Supreme Elder Narek. "You underestimated us," Ross said firmly. Narek sneered. "You are only beginning. The stars belong to the Zorth." "But the stars belong to those who fight for them," Ross replied. The battle ended with the fall of the Zorth flagship. Its control over the system was broken, and the alien fleets retreated. With the flagship destroyed, the Ember network spread its influence. Worlds once oppressed began to rebuild, free from control. Humanity's fire had crossed the stars, lighting hope in the darkest places. Mara stood outside under Earth's night sky, looking up at the stars. She smiled softly. "We were given an insult disguised as a gift, but we answered with fire, and that fire will never die."